when somebody says something's too expensive, too complex, not right now, you don't know what any of those things mean. And so if you literally just say the little bit of an objection, too expensive, and then say, tell me more about that, or too expensive, what do you mean? You will then be in a better position than if you go, oh, well, you know, it's really the value. Like the second you do that, you've told the buyer that you don't care what they have to say and that you're just on a script. But when you're like, okay, I hear you. So tell me, too expensive, what do you mean? And you genuinely care, that attacks the assumption and it gets you a little bit closer.
In this episode, we're going to show you how to get people to close themselves into your offer and double your close rate, all the while feeling less salesy doing it with Chris Duprey. So stick around.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now let's get to it with today's guest.
Hey, Chris, we're super excited to have you with us today. Why don't we give a little context for the audience? What do you do? Where did all this come from?
Yeah, so I am the co-founder and head coach at the Question First Group. We help leaders and sales folks ditch their assumptions and get past surface level conversations to get into real conversations, drive growth, clarity, build trust. So how did I get there? Over the last 11 years, so post-Army, running businesses, coaching businesses, seeing that most sales conversations are the worst event of everybody's day, right? Where you get onto a sales call and salesperson goes right into a pitch. They go right into all of these things without ever knowing anything. And so about 2 years ago, we decided to form the Question First Group and specifically target communication in sales and in leadership, but that's a whole nother area of use. Today, we're going to focus on sales, but how can we help sales teams and sales leaders actually communicate? So we formed the company, 4 of us, and here we are today.
That's awesome. And I think if your sales calls are not fun, you're doing something wrong. So I think it's really important in having this conversation to help it be an enjoyable process for the prospect, but also for you as a business owner or as the closer, because it can be, and I know I found from my experience and teaching others, it's when you are in that space and you're there to serve and you've practiced enough, you've done the reps, right? And now you can enjoy the process and show up the best way you can to help them. You can, it should be the peak of your day. That should be where you're getting the highs of your day for both you and for your prospect, hopefully soon to be client.
Yeah, 100%. And if you just go think about the last time you bought a piece of software, it likely is like a cringeworthy experience, right? Where they showed you 1,000 features and you're like, I just needed to see these 2, and it just sucks the life out of it. So how do we change that? So it can be, as you just said, Leah, like an exciting thing for the buyer and a fun experience for us, because it totally can be if we have the right conversation.
Absolutely. So walk us through your process. What does this look like?
Yeah, it's a very simple idea of be curious. So the problem that we usually find when we watch sales calls or talk to sales organizations, the second a sales rep hears a pain point, their solution, their service, their product solves, they get super excited and then they go dive right into how to fix it. But exactly, that is not the right way, because here's the deal. Pain alone isn't the thing. You have to get to what is the impact of that pain and where does it fall in terms of how important is it to solve that. To do that, we have to ask questions. We have to have this real conversation. And so we frame it out with 4 pillars. And the 4 pillars are yes and, the idea that energy matters and everything is going to move us forward. Vanguarding, which is the idea that getting ahead of a concern before it becomes a concern, is the way to do it. Question first. It is exponentially better when you as the buyer have the idea than if I tell you the idea. And the law of three is the first answer is never the real truth. It's never going to get you to the root cause. So those are the 4 pillars of how do you have those conversations. But the idea is we don't lean on assumptions. We dig. Somebody says it sounds too expensive. Every sales rep, right? When that happens, they go into defending the value. They go into talking about it. But do you and I have the same definition of too expensive? We may, but we don't know right now because we don't know each other. I have no idea. So we have to ask questions, get to this point where we fully understand where they're currently at and where they're trying to get to. Once those things are known and confirmed, then we can bring in how they could potentially solve it with or without us. But most sales reps get a bit of where they're at today, maybe a bit of this, but they don't connect the two. They don't understand the importance and the impact that that pain or those things are having. And so we have the wrong conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at Digital Trailblazer, I run our sales team. I do the majority of the closing, and I also train and teach, closing for our clients. And like, you win the sales call, like you win the close in the beginning through the questions that you're asking, through getting, and this is something that I harp on all the time. Just because you know the answer doesn't mean you're not supposed to ask the question. It's for the prospect to say it. And just this week, I was coaching someone. It's like, it's not about you getting the answer necessarily. This is about them saying the problem. This is about them acknowledging the current state or the gaps in between. So it's not just like you're checking a box like, oh, yep, I got X, Y, and Z. I'm good to go. This is about going through the process, and for them to be able to say the problems, say the issues, what they've tried, what hasn't worked. It's taking them to this process of really understanding, hey, I kind of need some help with this. And you're overcoming all those objections that people end up getting at the end, way at the beginning. So I spend 2/3 of my calls in discovery, if you will, because my closes are really fast and easy because I handled everything in all of the great questions and everything that we did the PDF.
That's right. So this idea is self-discovery is always better. And so where I see sales calls go to die is at the very beginning, right? First 5 minutes. If a sales rep doesn't set the conditions for what's going to happen in the first 5 minutes and own that call that, hey, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. Here's exactly why. Here's what we're going to do. And here's the outcome that we're getting to. You do that well, you now have gotten the permission to ask a ton of questions, to do this deep discovery, right? And this allows us to dig into all of those things. As you were saying, like the close just sort of naturally comes because we're making the buyer think, right? So I was just on a sales training with a company that I've been working with for a while, and it's them versus somebody else. And they got the champion to say, well, I'm going to be recommending you. But what they failed to ask was why, right? So they got the person to make a choice. So like, this is something you could do right now without knowing anything about breakthrough conversations. If you're given a choice or you give your buyer choice, this or that, no matter what they say, your next sentence should just be why. It forces them to think. And then you can do, well, how do we get everybody else to understand that, right? So we're all on their team. They're now doing it. But the idea is a simple question, a simple follow-up to a choice question makes them think, gets us moving forward, right? And so this is where the law of three we talk about and just digging deeper and going through there.
So in the sales call process, because I know I've been on sales calls where the person was clearly kind of new. They were working off a script and they were asking me questions and they clearly didn't understand why they were asking me these questions. And some of the questions seemed like the exact same question. And I felt like, okay, didn't I just answer that for you? And now you're asking me again. And so what are the questions that we need to ask that are really important during a sales call?
It's a great question. The way that I would start is, what brought you here today? It's as simple as that, right? Because, so again, this is dependent. If you are talking to the administrative assistant like they're taking every meeting they can get, right? But if you're talking to decision makers, they gave you time because they either consciously or subconsciously know that something is wrong and they are hoping that you can help them. So I think the number one mistake a lot of folks make, that because they won't ask those hard questions, is the buyer needs you as much as you need them, right? Sometimes they need you more than you need them. And we have to realize that. So we start with a very, hey, what brought you here? What made you reach out? What had you accept this call and get them going? And then it is the law of three over and over again. So if they say, well, we're struggling with generating more leads. Okay. Tell me more. Like, what are you doing today? Right. So it's really digging deep. But the idea, you start there and then it's, where are you at? Where are we trying to go? What have we tried? And once you get the issue, like the real issue, then it's, well, tell me how that's impacting the organization. Get them to tell you. I joke around. I had a home remodeling company that redid kitchens. And I was like, I hate my kitchen cabinets, but it's not impacting my life at all. So no matter how much I tell you I don't like them, I'm not spending the money to fix them yet because I still have people over for dinner. Right? Like, so there's no thing there. And so we have to get to that impact. And then we got to gauge it depending on what our service or product is. Does it need to be important? Is it important to solve? And so through that question, through that deep discovery, through this conversation that should feel like a conversation, not an interrogation, we get to the point where they know what they need to do. And that's when closing is easy and winning becomes a habit.
I think that digging process that you use is so important because there'll be so many times that people jump on a sales call with us or we'll have a conversation with them and they'll say something like, yeah, I need more leads or I need more qualified leads. And we'll ask, okay, well, what did you try? And they'll say something, oh, I hired an agency to do Facebook ads for me. And, Facebook is just crap leads and they're junk and they're low quality and blah, 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 blah. And it just didn't work for us. And through that process, because Facebook ads is one of the things, it's one of our favorite traffic sources. And so if we had not dug into that and kind of asked, like, what did you try? Why did it not work? If we hadn't done that, and then we got to the end of the sales call and suddenly it's, oh, by the way, we have this great Facebook ad strategy. If we hadn't really kind of taken care of that issue up front and said, okay, well, what did the agency do for you? What was the click rate? What were these things? Did they work with you on the messaging? What were they sending the traffic? If we hadn't dug into those things and really found out, okay, well, Facebook ads work, but here's why you were getting low quality leads with it. Here's why this was happening and why it didn't work for you. If we hadn't done that first, if we had gotten to the end and said, hey, by the way, we got this great Facebook ad strategy, in their mind, they're thinking, oh, well, I tried Facebook ads before and it didn't work. So there's no way I'm joining this.
That's right. And if it's me, I'm going, talk to me about what happens in the sales process. Because the number one thing that salespeople do is complain about the leads when they are just horrible at the sales part. No sales guy's going to tell you the leads are great. So like we have to watch sales calls. We have to understand all that stuff. But what you just described, Todd, is like, if you don't actually listen and uncover the reality that is there, the buyer knows you're not listening. Like if you just go back to like in IT, companies are the best example of this. Like 99% of them have a checklist of all the things they got to ask. How many servers, how many users, how many licenses, how many this, how many that. But you'll notice they never ask a follow-up question. And so it's clear whether you see them physically doing it or not, they just move on. So when we give an answer, if we don't follow up and dig deeper, we all know that they're really just asking questions to ask questions. That is not what breakthrough conversations is. Breakthrough conversations is digging into it so that we get to these aha moments. We, as the sales professional, can paint the entire picture of where they're at and where they're going so that we can help them get to the moment where they go, Chris, I know exactly what we need to do. And it comes from asking great questions and asking great follow-up questions and throwing all of our assumptions out the window.
So I think something that's really important for folks, especially if they're newer, they're not necessarily seasoned salespeople, but it's really sort of the posture and the mentality going into the call and maintaining that through the call. So can you speak to that a little bit, what your advice is on that side of things?
I mean, the first thing that I would tell everybody that sells, especially digitally, right? So I also think that the days of going into the office for a boardroom meeting are few and far between in terms of selling. So we're in this platform, right? First thing I would say is stand up. You have more energy when you are standing, right? So I would say stand up. The second thing is be aware of what is your background in Zoom, right? There's a whole virtual selling piece. Now, granted, if I didn't sell from this room, would I still have all my army stuff up on the wall? Probably, but you can learn a ton about me if all you do is look at what's behind me. But how many sales reps do we see their bed behind them, or that blurred out backdrop, or the virtual background that when they move their arm goes away, right? Those just from the get-go create a bad experience. The second thing is you have to practice. You have to practice. Nobody gets great at breakthrough conversations by just doing it. Nobody gets great at sales or anything by just doing it. And so if we as senior leaders, as sales leaders, as owners, don't make our teams and ourselves role play sales scenarios, we are leaving money on the table. So I always joke when I speak to CEO groups, I'm like, unless you're swimming in a pool of gold like Scrooge McDuck did on DuckTales from when I was a kid, you are leaving money on the table, lighting it on fire by not forcing folks to role play and practice. Said another way, think of your favorite sports team. If they were like, you know what, we don't have to practice, everybody would be up in arms, but that's in essence what we're doing. And the third piece, so if the first is great setup, the second's practice, the third is you have to watch the game film. You have to become a student of your craft. And your craft as a sales professional is communication. And you have to watch how you communicate, from the words that you say, to the way in which you say them, to the body language, to the movements, to all of that stuff to drive the right experience.
Now, one of the things that I know a lot of people kind of have in their minds is that if I'm not good at something, I can just outsource it. And I know that we have our opinion about this, but would it be a good idea, or is it going to work at all to hire somebody to do your sales calls for you if you yourself have not yet mastered that part of your business?
I would argue that outsourcing your sales conversations is like giving someone you don't really know your bank account information and just being like, hey, here you go. Dumbest thing I've ever heard. This is who I am, right? But it's like your sales conversations are the lifeblood of your organization. I don't know how. I would rather the founder think that they're still the only person that can take the sales call over the other, right? Like, we got to train that out of the founder, because other people can sell for you, but they need to be in your organization. So you might close deals with an outsourced sales organization. Maybe they're going to crash and burn when you start servicing those folks, because something is going to get dropped in the handoff. Because even in organizations that have sales and marketing teams and service teams that are all combined, that all work perfectly well together, balls get dropped in transition. So you're adding this extra layer of crazy into the one process that you need to sustain and grow your organization. So huge advocate of you need to sell for yourself, Todd.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it's people at the beginning are often just trying to outsource their problems, and they don't want to learn how to sell. But even if we're just not even looking at the sales, like closing sales, which is obviously important, and delivering and keeping your clients happy, if we were just to look at being able to have even create better copy, the very best copy that you will ever write comes after you're having all of these amazing sales conversations and you are hearing from the mouth of your prospects exactly what their problems are, why they need help, what they've tried before, what hasn't worked. Everything you need is the copy gold, and they just want to hand it off to somebody else.
Yeah, listen, my business partner and co-founder, Marcus Sheridan, wrote the book, They ask, you answer, and the third version just came out, endless customers. The whole idea is the buyer's the hero, right? Just like in Don Miller's story brand. But it's like, how do you get found digitally? You answer questions people are looking for. It's just like you show them the ad that matches what they want, and they're going to get there. I mean, this is you're hitting on a nerve, because it's this idea of, if we think that a great creative agency is going to write all of my web copy and all of my content, but they've never talked to my customer, watched a sales conversation, or delivered my thing, they have no idea. And no amount of deep discovery is going to get there, like watching a sales call or several hundred. And now with AI, real quick, like now with AI, you can get all those transcripts and really get a good sense of who your buyer is and create the right personas or avatars, whatever we want to call them today, that are based on what the actual people said.
Yeah, that's right. AI can analyze all that stuff for you in minutes. It can save you so much time. We've had other guests that have talked about how to do that. And it's amazing how much time that can save you.
I mean, and it's as simple today as uploading a file like we've always uploaded before and just asking it questions. Which, by the way, if you're a one-person show and you're like, I can't role play because I don't have a team, you do now with AI. You can 100% with ChatGPT's voice-enabled thing. I have had conversations where I've role-played conversations with the tool, right? So this idea of you got to practice is there. AI is going to help. The idea of like actually listening to and understanding your buyer, it shouldn't be mind-blowing for folks, but yet you hear pitch after pitch after pitch. You hear bad web copy after bad web copy, and people just outsource to all these organizations that promise you gold. And when the reality is that isn't usually the case, unless it's specialized stuff.
And to your point, one of the experiences we've had is with trying to hire ad agencies to kind of run and manage our ads for us. And time again, it didn't matter how much we paid them. We've paid as much as $20,000 a month for some of the very top end ad agencies out there. And every single time, whenever they ran ads for us, it never did better than the ads that we ran ourselves. The best case scenario was when we would create our own ad copy and give that to them, and then they would just set up the ad. But at that point, it's like, well, why don't I just run the ads for myself rather than pay you how many thousands of dollars a month? Just click a few buttons on Facebook and set that up. And then there was another ad agency that every time I wanted to run a new ad, I had to fill out like a 3-page questionnaire about who's your target audience, what are their pain points. It's like, by the time I fill this out, I may as well have just written the ad myself. It would have been a lot faster. And so, yeah, like you said, like you are the one that's going to know your clients and their pain points and all that stuff. You're going to know it the best. Some outsourced agency is not going to be able to do that for you. And so they're never going to be able to perform as well and not even come close. It's not like, oh, they can come close, but it's not that great. They will not even come close to as well as you could do for yourself.
That's right. And then if we go to sales, outsource sales, it gets even crazier to me. Same thing with like outsourcing SDRs. Like, what happens when they ask the first question? When the prospect asks first question and they don't know. If I was an entrepreneur, a founder that's like, yeah, but I can't make all these cold calls right now, I would invest in an AI calling tool. There are several out there that can do all of that, oh, by the way, you can train with every conversation you've ever had before. Like, you can give them your brain, per se, in a way that if the prospect asked a question, it would have an answer or get them to you. I think that you're going to see a shift, especially in the sales side, away from outsourcing to call centers, SDRs, or outsourced sales reps. To the people that are doing that, I think will eventually lean into AI. But my thing is, sales is something that you should own. When you sell the way that we're talking about, which is a deep discovery, a conversational style, you're not selling, you're consulting, you're coaching. And if you stay buyer focused and hyper curious, you will win. It is when we move to self-focused and living off of assumptions that we get sales breath. And y'all can spot a needy salesperson from 10 miles away, right? And so as long as we stay, like I said, others focused and curious, you're going to win in sales.
I think that whole conversation around posture and that feeling of neediness, like I think one of the first things you mentioned was that the buyer should need your service more than you need the buyer. And I think that is so true. Like if you give off the sense at all that you need the sale, it doesn't matter what you say. If you start giving off that vibe, it's done.
So the buyer needs us as much, if not more, than we need them. Because think about yourselves as buyers. The second you see a needy salesperson, I mean, for me, when I see it, I have a little internal chuckle because I know if I buy from them, I'm going to get a huge discount, right? But I know that simply by how much they're trying to close me, that I'm in control. And so we want to stay away from that. And so when I teach folks how to do this, and by the way, we don't teach them what to say. We basically try to teach folks how to think from this place of curiosity. And we have a system and a framework that they work through, but it's all about coaching. It's all about practice. But the idea is the buyer's not going to know that they're really in the sales conversation. Like they're going to know because it's clear. We've set out outcomes. But when you do this well, people are like, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. Or you'll hear things like, nobody's ever asked me that. That's when you know that you're differentiating yourself, especially in these businesses where a lot of people sound the same because they got a sales script from the IT conference. They got a sales script from the digital marketing thing. They got this thing from HubSpot or Salesforce or insert whatever that's basically like Bant or Medic, whatever those. I know Gong, I think, uses Medic, and it's like, when you're going through that very formulaic thing, you don't know when somebody's actually doing deep discoveries correctly.
Absolutely. So do you have any kind of lasting tips or things you want to kind of wrap with today?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the biggest thing is that assumptions are where sales go to die. Assumptions are where all communication goes to die, but sales specifically. And so a couple examples are just, when somebody says something's too expensive, too complex, not right now, you don't know what any of those things mean. And so if you literally just say the little bit of an objection, too expensive, and then say, tell me more about that, or too expensive, what do you mean? You will then be in a better position than if you go, oh, well, it's really the value. Like the second you do that, you've told the buyer that you don't care what they have to say and that you're just on a script. But when you're like, okay, I hear you. So tell me, too expensive, what do you mean? And you genuinely care, that attacks the assumption and it gets you a little bit closer. So that's the thing for all sales. If you have one takeaway, it's stop assuming, get curious.
Yep. I love that. If people want to learn more about you and check you out, where should they head?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the bald Chris Duprey that's out there, or you can go to questionfirstgroup.com and check us out.
Awesome. And you've got a freebie for the audience as well today?
We have a sales assessment. If you go to the website, it's there, but it's also sales.questionfirstgroup.com. You will go to this assessment that will take you through a journey of unpacking how you as a sales organization are functioning.
Awesome. We'll have the links to everything in the show notes and description. Chris, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.